I had quite a difficult school experience.
As in yourself?
As in myself, yeah. So I had a very difficult school experience. When I started in school, it was quite clear from the first few years that racism was quite rife within the community that I was raised in, but also within the school. And by the time I got to year 5, I was 10 years old, I experienced my first school exclusion.
Today on Black Next Gen, if this is the very first time you're watching us, we are a project where we're going around the country, we're going around, hopefully we will go around the world, okay? So that we can get people from black and minority backgrounds to be able to tell us about their experiences. And I think the reason why we're doing that is to be able to get people to hear and see people who look like them, who sound like them, okay? Who have been on journeys that they possibly are thinking, is this really the pathway for me? And guess what? For today, I've got this amazing person, okay?
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Abuyelu. I'm an assistant head teacher here at Eastbury Community School.
Let's invite Emmanuel to tell us about his journey. When we are talking about black people having very, challenging experiences in the education system, this is a person who had his experience, but guess what? He is now an assistant head teacher. It can work for everybody. Stand by whilst we introduce Emmanuel.
Hi, so my name is Emmanuel. Emmanuel Abuyelu. Come from a Nigerian home. 31 years old. I'm an assistant head teacher. To me, teaching is about empowering young people, changing lives, making a difference, and equipping young people with the tools to be better individuals for the future. I'm the director of a charity program called the Reachout Project.
Assistant head teacher at the age of what, 31?
Yeah, 31. Yeah,
wow.
Soon to be 32 though. So.
Wow. Can I shake your hand?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So these are the people that, they will be making the airwaves very soon, or he's already making the airwaves. Yeah, Emmanuel, at the age of 31, you are already an assistant head teacher. How did it start? How did it start?
Good question. Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that my parents have been massively, passionate about education from when I was young. They came over from Nigeria in the 80s, and I think for them they had a vision, which was that their children would come here, get good quality education and give themselves a platform to be able to be successful. Unfortunately, that wasn't exactly how it turned out. I had quite a difficult school experience.
As in yourself?
As in myself, yeah. So I had a very difficult school experience. When I started in school, it was quite clear from the first few years that racism was quite rife within the community that I was raised in, but also within the school. And by the time I got to year 5, I was 10 years old, I experienced my first school exclusion.
Hold on, at the age of what? 10?
Yeah.
So guys, wherever you are in the world, in UK, it may be a very, possible experience that people do hear of. But at the age of 10, you are excluded from school.
Yeah. Yeah.
What for?
If I'm being honest, the actual situation sounded very kind of minuscule, but I think it was a lead up of events and situations that I think the school used as an opportunity to basically kind of get rid of me. The actual specific event that led to me being sent out was me basically repeating to the class teacher something that she had said to us, and that was deemed as me being disrespectful. Quite frequently she would say, for crying out loud, if she was trying to get us to stop talking. And when she had told me off about something in the classroom, as I was sitting down, I muttered underneath my breath, for crying out loud. And she sent me out of the classroom. I spent the majority of the lesson out of that class. And then she just decided, actually, I don't want you to come back into the lesson, you need to go to the head teacher's office. And when I went to the head teacher's office, someone who I was unfortunately quite familiar with at that point, they had come to a conclusion that actually they were going to exclude me. And they made a decision that they were going to exclude me on that day. And I just remember being sat in the head teacher's office for about an hour or two until the end of the day. They contacted my dad, who wasn't able to pick me up at the time because he was working. But yeah, so they made a decision and said, I had been excluded. I mean, there was a bit more to the actual, but essentially, essentially, yeah, that was the first time I had experienced being excluded from school. But by that point, I'd already made up my mind that actually school wasn't a place for me. That was the perception I had of school.
You've definitely hit something on the head, because I think what is happening is, just like I've always said to people, I work as a social worker, okay? And what is happening is, we do have young people who do have a whole lot of experiences going on for them, and for that reason may act in different ways in schools, which for that reason, if schools are finding it very difficult to be able to manage, exclusion sometimes can be the only option for them. And the very unfortunate thing is, when young people or children are excluded from school, in terms of the pathways, we usually end young people going into the likes of people referral units, okay? And especially, there is this trend. I will definitely encourage people to start reading it out. For young black people, there may be the statistics to refer that what? In terms of numbers, this is definitely a trend coming up. So from the age of 10, you had your first exclusion.
Yep.
School was definitely a big no-no for you.
Yeah, school was a big no-no for me. Struggled to engage, but also struggled to see people who cared enough about me, and it really does matter. Growing up, I didn't see many black male teachers, and I definitely didn't see any black head teachers. I do think it had an impact on my experience in school, just because I felt like I didn't have someone that represented me, understood my culture. Being Nigerian, coming from a particular community, living in East Ham, I think it was really important to have at least someone in the school that could kind of understand that, and I didn't really get that. So I think for me, the drive to becoming a head teacher, I think ultimately is to build schools that are ultimately going to be the hub of our community. I think schools are incredibly important. Last thing, would you prefer for me to give you a challenge, or would you like to give each other a challenge? You want to give one to me? My experience as a child in school was very negative. And so because of that negative experience, teaching actually was the last thing I would have got into. I kind of fell into teaching. I left university, wasn't too sure what I wanted to do with myself. I was a sports coach for a number of years, and an opportunity came up where I was able to go into a school, and I was delivering football sessions there, and I said to the head teacher, is it possible for me to go in and get some work experience? She said, yes, come in, support a young man for 2 weeks while we've got someone on paternity leave. Long story short, the 2 weeks turned into 5 months, and at the end of that period of time, I realized that education is for me. So I trained as a teaching assistant initially. I did a number of years doing one-to-one support, learning support assistant, and I saw the impact that I could have with young people, particularly young people who were disadvantaged. There's been a few times where I've been left quite gobsmacked. For instance, I had a child, she was a selective mute, she hadn't spoken. And I remember teaching her for a number of months now. She wouldn't say a word to me, and I thought maybe the issue's with me. And I remember it was December. We were in the middle of a lesson, and she answered me. I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but she answered me, like she gave me a response. And I remember turning around at the teaching assistant like, did anyone else catch that? Did you hear that? She said something. And I think what was even more amazing was when her parent came into school, her mum came into school to speak to me, and she said, at home, she always talks about you. And I couldn't believe it. I spent the first few months thinking, maybe it's me, maybe it's because I'm a guy. And that just made me feel that sometimes what you think you know isn't always the case, and children always find ways to surprise you. And also I felt secondhand what my parents were experiencing in terms of their relationship with the school, and they received quite a number of microaggressions, the way they were treated, the way they were spoken to. So I think in some weird way there was a bit of relief from my parents, because it for them was like an opportunity for me to start fresh, start new somewhere else. So my parents had to then make a decision to move me to East London, where we started afresh in a new area, and I started a new school for a year in year 6. And I had a very positive year. It was a very good year.
Let's take a bit of a step back. When you got excluded and your dad had to be told, how was it like going back home and how was it like going back to that, supposedly African home where discipline and everything is believed to be where it starts?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I actually didn't end up going back home before I realised the experience of an African home or discipline.
Okay.
Funny enough, I was actually walking from school because my dad wasn't able to pick me up at the time. I was walking from school to my friend's house, who I would stay with, and that's where my dad would pick me up from.
Okay.
And so as I was making my way to my friend's house, I just remember hearing a beep. And it was my dad, and he pulled up to the side of me. But obviously I was quite shocked because my dad should have been at work.
Yeah.
And even though I knew even though I knew he would know, definitely, I wasn't expecting that to happen within the next hour or two. I was thinking I had a bit of a breather until that moment comes when my dad says, "What happened at school today?"
Yeah.
So he pulled up beside me by the car. I see my dad, he says, "Get in the car." I try to get into the back of the car. He says, "No, get into the front." And it must have been the slowest I've ever been to get into a car, you know. It took me about 10 minutes to put the seatbelt over, just trying to shield my head from the slap that was about to come.
Oh dear.
So yeah, but it was difficult, you know. But all jokes aside, I think it was probably, in hindsight, very heartbreaking for my parents.
Yeah.
Because all they did was work and expect in the meantime that the school system would look after their child and I just get an education. And I think very quickly they realised that it's not as simple as that, and that there was a lot more work to be done. Of course, I was the one who they felt had still made a mistake, but I think they also recognised that the school in itself was quite toxic, and I knew that they knew that.
There was a system.
There was a system, and yeah, there was things that they were going through and experiencing that whether they knew that I knew or not, I knew what they were going through.
Okay.
And I think I inherited that, and so it kind of determined my approach as well when I got to school.
Okay.
It was very much a us versus them mentality within myself, but there was also a small community of black people who would experience the same things as well, and we were in a very predominantly white area,
Okay.
a white working class area where racism was quite rife. It was a well-known area for racism, Bermondsey, Millwall, so
In London.
in London, southeast London. So,
Okay.
you know, but it didn't take away the fact that my parents' expectations and standards for me were still very high, and that was still significantly quite disappointing.
In yourself.
In myself, but also my parents, you know, for them. And you know, being a West African man yourself, you know that, you know, in our culture, we pride ourselves on many things, and one of them being kind of like success and the way that we're presented in our community and stuff like that. And so it's never a proud moment for people to know that your child has been kicked out or excluded from school.
Guys, if you are just listening to us, I'm not just talking to somebody who just got excluded from school. I am talking to an assistant head teacher. Yeah, and this is how the journey started. But I think the reason why I am very focused on this fact of your exclusion is because as a father myself, when my child comes home and says to me they've been excluded, obviously I'll definitely not be dancing to it. But equally, my understanding of what are the factors that are leading to exclusions for my child, that is one thing. But equally, you did say to me, Emmanuel, you are the first son, of the family. So there may be that status or
100%.
Expectation on you.
100%.
How do you think you felt within yourself, having the younger siblings as well?
I think at the time I was a bit oblivious to that kind of role and expectation. Still quite young in myself, so I'm not thinking about how much this is going to impact my 6-year-old sister and my 4-year-old brother. However, when I experienced my second school exclusion in secondary school, in year 10, by that point it was far more apparent to me that actually I'd messed up.
Emmanuel, year 10, you had another one?
Yeah.
Were the lessons not learnt?
No, not quite. I think there was definitely a theme for most of my educational experience, which was one, I was the boy with potential. That was always what would be said in every parents' evening, every discussion, but for whatever reason I wasn't fulfilling it. And then I guess the other theme that went through the whole of my school experience was I wasn't engaged.
Okay.
I didn't
What
see
do you mean by that?
So I didn't really see a purpose to what I was learning on an everyday basis. And the teachers themselves, for the most part, as a general statement, I wasn't inspired or motivated by them, and nor were they teaching me in a way that inspired or motivated me. So when you're not engaged, and I say this from an from a practitioner's point of view, if you don't engage children, you're going to find poor behavior.
Yeah.
It's simultaneous with each other, If a child is not engaged, if they're not enjoying what they're doing, if they're not stimulated, they will find another way to occupy their brain, you know, their time. And those low-level behaviors there are sometimes what we miss. The lack of engagement is what causes those behaviors. And so in class, if I'm not engaged, I'm going to have a conversation with someone next to me. I'm going to find an activity or a game to do. And if the teachers aren't aware or prepared or trained in a way to understand the needs of all types of children within their context, they will make decisions like many of my teachers made, which is kick me out, but not provide any kind of restorative justice to bring me back in. Or do one thing even worse than that, and based on what I did yesterday, tell me I'm not coming in today. You get it? So there was no fresh start. And so when that reputation builds, again, it starts to create a us and them mentality. It starts to create, for me, what I call a block. I already know what you're like, and you already think you know what I'm like. So let me stay in my space, you stay in your space. And before you know it, you don't go to lessons. You don't want to go to lessons. That's how you start bunking school. Because you know what's going to happen when you go in. You know the character and the personality of the people that are teaching you. They don't care about you coming in and actually doing well. If you're not going to do what they've told you to do, get out. And that approach just did not work with me. And I was always a very outspoken child anyway. So you couldn't just tell me one thing without me questioning it if I didn't think it was genuinely right. And so as time went on, the older I got in school, I just found myself in more situations where if I wasn't engaged, I might find myself doing something I shouldn't be doing.
I mean, my schooling was terrible. My schooling was terrible mostly because I am dyslexic, sorry. And as a young black male in the area that I grew up with, it was like, yeah, he's just not trying hard enough. And at the time, there wasn't nowadays where you say dyslexic and everyone understands it. It was like, nah, he's just not trying. They didn't even know I was dyslexic. I didn't know I was dyslexic until I was in college, and then a teacher just suggested it to me. It was only when I was in university that actually it was like, okay, let's actually test and see if this young person is dyslexic. So at the time, my schooling was horrible, so I just gave up on school because they gave up on me before I even started. So for me, schooling was terrible. And obviously going through the system and now getting to the place that I am, I realized that that is actually what I want to do. Rather than teach all of the kids, I actually want to work with the ones that needed it the most, the most vulnerable ones, and here we are.
To me, teaching is about empowering young people, changing lives, making a difference, and equipping young people with the tools to be better individuals for the future. But in the case in which I got excluded, that was a one-off situation that I always look back with regret. So I was in my science class with my best friend at the time, and I can't remember what we were doing at the time. I think maybe she walked out and we were like messing about on the table, playing with rulers, something silly. So she kicked us, so she said, you need to get out, both of you get out. So we decided to walk out, and then we realized that actually we needed our coursework. Because the course that we were taking, I had started my GCSEs at that point in year 10. The course we were taking, it required us to basically submit two years worth of coursework. We weren't doing exams for science, we were doing coursework. So if we weren't in the lessons and we weren't getting our coursework done, that was going to contribute to our final result. So we made our way back to the class saying, actually, we need our coursework. If she's going to kick us out, let's just go to another class teacher who we knew would take us in and give us the space to do our work. So we went back in there to get our coursework, and she basically tried to prevent us from taking our coursework, and she tried to barricade the door. So at the time we made the mistake of trying to force our way through the classroom first and foremost, and then where the coursework was on the table, she tried to pick up the coursework before we could pick up our coursework, and my friend picked up the coursework before her, which ended up in a bit of a struggle. Picked up the coursework and we walked out, and that was that. But by the time we got to the end of the corridor, we had senior members of staff running after us in the corridor, you know, literally like a pack hunting their prey. And we were like, what? Like, what's going on? And, you know, like, you've assaulted Miss So-and-so. And we was like, no, we didn't. He's like, yeah, there's been witnesses, blah, blah. So we're like, there's 30 children in the classroom. Ask them what happened, you know. We didn't assault anybody. And then the teacher next door is saying, yeah, I heard it from next door. So we found ourselves in a situation where they were now basically trying to come to a conclusion of permanently excluding us.
Okay.
My dad had to come and represent both of us because my friend's dad was at a point where he was kind of tired of it, so he didn't turn up. So my dad was there for the both of us, and yeah, so it ended up in an exclusion.
Okay.
They escalated it by saying that the teacher at the time felt like she felt threatened, and you know, she made a meal of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so what that meant was we was excluded for a period of time, and then actually the decision was reversed, I think, where we basically went from being excluded to then doing a period of time out of school, but when we came back into school we were doing what we call internal exclusion.
Okay.
So we were in school but we weren't able to go to our lessons. And again, where this was my GCSE year, that was quite significant, because if I wasn't in my class doing the work,
yeah,
I'm doing it now in a separate isolated space,
yeah,
with someone teaching us but not really teaching us.
So Emmanuel, GCSE, you managed to sit your GCSE, but you did say that you didn't get the best of grades.
Yeah, so we were, our choices were limited at that point. Because we was in internal exclusion, we could only take our core subjects plus a BTEC option, and I think that was BTEC Sports at the time. We were both part of the football team, so and they just introduced a new course, so we had the opportunity to get some extra GCSEs potentially, but we were at the time only taking maths, English, science, and science, and I think I had one more subject like drama that I was doing after school, and then we had the BTEC Sports. But ultimately I left school with only 4 GCSEs. I failed my GCSEs. I received two C's in English. I got my 2 C's for my science, because although we were internally excluded, that impacted actually our ability to go to the lessons to do the coursework. But fortunately we had a teacher that was an advocate for us, and he helped us significantly with completing our coursework. And if not for that, we wouldn't have received those grades either.
Emmanuel, this is the situation where you're working as an assistant head teacher. You're not just working in that space, but you're working with young people who have additional needs.
Yeah.
Why that choice?
So actually, I'm no longer working with children with additional needs, not in the same way. So when I became a teacher, and that was all by, some ways by chance, but by purpose. I knew straight away I didn't want to work in mainstream education.
Okay.
Because I'd worked in it already as a teaching assistant, and when I'd made the decision to become a teacher, I'd already recognized that the children that I wanted to support were the ones that were disadvantaged in some ways. So it might have been because they might have had some family complex issues, maybe a diagnosis of some sort, special educational needs, behavior difficulties, whatever it was. But those were the children in which, when I supported them, I saw the most significant impact, and I knew that I was getting fulfillment from that. So when I became a teacher, they were still the same children I wanted to teach.
Okay.
So rather than going into mainstream education, I basically sought after every type of special educational need or alternative provision school that I could find that was dealing with complex behaviors. And I was fortunate enough to basically, long story short, get into a school. So that school was a school for children with social, emotional and mental health issues. Decades ago, that would have been children that you would have classed as children with emotional behavior difficulties.
Yeah.
And the time before that, that would have just been children that you just called your naughty children. Yeah, your problem child. Yeah. So those children all have an educational healthcare plan. They all have not quite a diagnosis, but their primary need is that they've got social, emotional and mental health issues, and they have significant behavioral difficulties. The consistent thing with pretty much most of those students was that they all had some form of early childhood trauma.
Okay. Whether
it was physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. They'd all gone through some type of, the majority of them had gone through some kind of early childhood trauma, and a huge percentage of them were also children that were in care.
Okay.
And with almost all of them, they were in our provision because they could not, or the school could not make the curriculum accessible to them, and so the children were ultimately not being catered for within those provisions. So I worked in that school for 5 years. It was actually my first educational stint. It was like my first educational job as a teacher, and I developed there incredibly. I always say to teachers, anyone that's maybe thinking about becoming a teacher or is currently a teacher, you don't learn certain things unless you actually do the job or you work in that environment. And me working in a special school with children with very complex behaviours probably gave me far more training than any other training program could give me in terms of meeting the needs of those type of children.
Okay.
So I worked there for 5 years. Within that time, you know, I got promoted a number of times. I became a Senko whilst I was there. And I spent 5 good years there developing, but also, more importantly, supporting children with those very difficult, complex needs.
Okay.
I had a number of success stories that I'm quite proud of, proud to be a part of. Children that had come to our school, had not been in any type of education for about a year or two, now spending full time in education, accessing a curriculum that was centered around their strengths, their needs, giving them opportunities to see things that they haven't seen before, do things they haven't seen before, like horse riding. So it was such a wholesome experience for myself that when I left regrettably, but I left knowing that for me to be the kind of educator and leader that I want to be, I needed to now experience the other side of education, which is mainstream education.
Okay.
So I made that decision in this time last year to leave special education, and I basically started my new post as an assistant head teacher in a mainstream school in September last year, 2021.
Guys, let me pay attention, yeah?
Yeah, but being there and working with vulnerable people allowed me to realise that this is where I want to be. Great. Nothing bad about teaching, but yeah, that's where I felt that.
We're in the school, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry, I apologise. But yeah, that's what I felt my niche was and what I actually wanted to give to young people that were misunderstood.
One of the things that, you know, Emmanuel, I have picked from you is, obviously as a social worker, I work with children in care as well, okay? So some of the things that you've talked about in terms of early childhood trauma, I can definitely relate to it, especially when it comes to my young people. Equally, working with teachers who, you know, are thinking that, you know what, this child may be labeled as the problem child, you know. Those experiences sometimes become very difficult to manage if we don't understand what exactly is going on for the child. But the very good thing is we are seeing somebody who had the label, yet went into the classroom to teach, and your priority was to be able to teach those people who were having those kind of challenges. So in your new role as the assistant head teacher at the age of 31, Emmanuel, I'm proud of you, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish I could say, you know, I'm proud of you. I know I'm not that old to say, oh yeah, I wish my son, I'm sure my son one day will make me proud.
Yeah, of course.
So that definitely we can see such positives, you know, in terms of roles coming from our community. Emmanuel, apart from the fact that you are an assistant head teacher now, you are not focusing your attention only within the education sector. You are doing other projects, and I know that you are running the Reachout Project with other people as well. Tell us about what the project is as well.
Yeah, so the Reachout Project is a mentoring program for young boys who have been disengaged, disenfranchised from school. The program is specifically for young black boys. Predominantly, the majority of our children are between the ages of 11 to 16, so the secondary school ages. And yeah, it's a mentoring program to basically promote opportunities for young boys in London to succeed, and we do that through mentoring and surrounding them by positive adults, positive role models, but giving them physical, tangible opportunities to succeed. We started in 2017, so my partners, so I'm a director, and I have 2 colleagues who are directors of the company as well, but they're also the founders, and that's Lillian and Michaela. And so they're incredible individuals. They essentially founded the Reachout Project when they went to a Stormzy concert in Brixham, so you know the area quite well. So they went to a concert there, and they went to go see Stormzy, and what they saw outside was a group of young people who were from the area or the local area, young black boys, but they couldn't afford to go in, but they were fans of Stormzy. And when they went in, the demographic of the people inside of the concert was so different from the crowd outside, but also the original crowd in which he would have come from, Stormzy, they said, how does that even make sense? So the idea came into their head to go into schools and provide young people with the opportunity to be able to go and access things, concerts, places like that, where they wouldn't normally be able to access. And it was free of charge to the children and to the families. So that's essentially how the Reachout Project started. We started working with a school in Croydon. We took on a number of young boys and we basically gave them the opportunities to basically go out to concerts, to, you know, football matches, wherever it might be, to broaden their horizons and take them out of the area of Croydon.
Okay.
Stormzy from the very beginning of that was very supportive of it and provided actually all the transport for every trip that we were going on. So he was already an advocate from the very beginning of that. Long story short, in that year when they started, I became a consultant for them. So I consulted and supported them on their journey. And in 2018, they asked me to be a director. I accepted the offer because I think we've had this conversation before, but the importance of role models for me was quite close to my heart because I never had a group of people I could identify, or even one significant person that I could say, you know what, that is the person I'm going to cling to, I'm going to follow that person, even if it's just by them leading by example. I didn't really have that. So I thought if we can create that for other young boys, that's us filling in the gap that wasn't there for us. So I joined them in 2018. That same year we became a charity interest company in 2018, and since then we've basically grown. We've gone into at least 2 or 3 schools within the Croydon area, supported hundreds of young boys within that area of Croydon. Quite proud to say that actually the boys in which we first started with in 2017 are still a massive part of our cohort of young people that we support now. In some ways they are alumni, you know, they're not in the same age group of the children we support within the school, but we still have very close relationships and support those young boys on their journeys, even though they're 17, 18, 19. And I think that's kind of what makes the Reachout Project stand out from maybe a typical organization where it's a kind of, we go in there 6 weeks, do a bit of intervention, we come out. Actually, mentoring is a journey, and we've been with them for that whole process. But to narrow it down anyway, the Reachout Project, essentially what we offer is mentoring. So we go into the schools and we provide one-to-one mentoring, very skilled and very well-equipped mentors that we've got doing that job. Really, really special. Shout out to Anthony and to Marcus. They do a lot of good work with those young boys.
The whole point of today is basically just inviting you guys here so you can learn a bit more about radio and learn about all the different roles.
How old are you?
14.
14 and 15. Wow, you're not a grown up, innit? Is it hard? To be honest, it is quite difficult, but once you get the hang of the buttons, then it's quite easy. But it's just knowing how to like fade the song and then press the jingle so it all goes smoothly.
Want to be artists?
Yeah.
Sick. Be Mesa?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to send that over.
To him.
To me?
To him.
Yeah.
We have a whole team of people that work on visual content. Loads of different types of jobs within radio and TV that you wouldn't maybe know about.
And you can actually start making music steered towards what your audience likes and take away the parts that they don't like, but you're never going to know what that is.
And so we provide that, and then we also then do group mentoring. So we meet with the boys once a month. The school opens up their space and we basically have sessions that can be very informal. So we might, for example, just order pizza, get some popcorn, drinks.
You know what? I can definitely say it on camera straight away. If you have a session coming up, reach out to me. I will volunteer.
Okay, that sounds good.
I will volunteer my time because the main reason why, Emmanuel, I reached out to you is I met you in a webinar, a live, and
Instagram live,
Instagram live on More Education. Reach out to him. He's definitely doing something great for Black and minority people in the community. I think when I listen to you, and especially about the Reachout Project, with your work, with Black and minority young people, I think for me, what I could relate with is the issue of role modeling, okay? You being a Black person yourself, you being an assistant head, with most of the time, our young people do struggle with the authority. And this is the authority coming to them to say, you know what, let's play football, let's kick about, let's mess about. I am here, I'm able to support you. And I would definitely encourage, other professionals, other people who are out there who can equally volunteer their time. We want these people to be available to our children. so that they can see and hear that they can be more than what the society tells them that they are, okay? And I'm more than happy, just like I said, I will volunteer. Yeah, I've said it on camera, I definitely will honor it.
Thank you.
So let's stand by, you will definitely see me maybe eat a pizza, not kick a football, yeah? But the good thing is, Emmanuel, I watched one clip of a young lad who went for an internship, was it Sky or BBC, which he never thought of, that was going to be a space for me.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so one of our students, he actually wasn't in mainstream education at the time.
He wasn't?
No. So one of the things we provide with the Reachout Project, aside from the mentoring, is work experience, which is quite an important part of what we do. So we had an opportunity for 3 of our young boys to go and do work experience at ITV Studios.
ITV?
ITV, yeah. So we told the young boys, and they were excited to go. But one of them in particular he wasn't so keen on it. We actually literally kind of have to drag him and say, no, you have to go. Like, we're offering it to you. Doesn't matter if you want to do it or not, you need to come. Yeah. He actually wasn't in mainstream education at the time. He had been excluded from school, so he was actually in what we call centre, which is where it's an alternative provision, which I don't think he was even attending as much as he should have. So he didn't really have much hope or aspiration in general for anything, but particularly to go to ITV Studios. Didn't really know the benefit of it. Long story short, I accompanied the boys to ITV on a 3 or 4 day work experience, and what I saw, I think, was probably one of the proudest moments I've had with the Reachout Project. Okay. I saw 3 young boys who were fearless and, in a good way, naive. They walked into the studios with their do-rags on, AirPods on, came in with, 1 or 2 of them might have dressed up a little bit. One of them kind of just came as he was. And I saw these guys sitting with executives and pretty much, delivering proposals and delivering an idea or a concept on one of the most popular TV shows we know about, Love Island.
Okay.
And these young boys were literally part of a steering group within that time where they were working on something that the executives were genuinely looking at like, that's a fantastic idea. Like, are you guys taking notes? Can we grab this, Okay. And at the end of that period of time of work experience, one of the executives, one of the main contacts that we had, contact with, she said, they were so impressive that we would love to offer them an internship.
Okay.
One of them in particular. And that internship was for the summer. So straight away, you saw the power of networking and providing an opportunity. The young boy, when he heard it, he was excited, but what was more powerful was before that he had said to us, I didn't think that was something I'd ever be interested in.
Okay.
But now, that's the kind of place I want to work in. He wants to be able to get onto a train and get into Farringdon and walk into a nice glass door and basically be working. You get it? He didn't see himself working in that environment, and now he could see it. But this was a boy that wasn't actually in mainstream education, full-time education. He was in an alternative provision. If you knew his family situation, you'd say his pathway was only one way.
Guys, I would definitely say to people out there, let your young people listen to such stories, okay? Let your young people listen to, such amazing people in our community who are doing stuff for our young people. Because, unfortunately, if we are not seeing, if we are not hearing, it's really difficult for us to believe that we can do it. So for anybody who is by any means, by mistake, you've come across this video, that is exactly what we do as Black Next Gen. We find people like these, okay, who can be inspiration people for us in our community. So by any means, if you haven't subscribed, I think I've not said that today, please subscribe, yeah? Because we need to grow the community, we need to grow the platform so that we can have lots of people to be able to, come and share their stories. So if you are a professional out there, if you are whoever, that you've got that story that you think, would motivate our girls, our boys, even us as parents, please reach out to us. It's the same Black Next Gen on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Okay. I'm learning that.
Yeah?
I'm definitely doing well. Twitter, and also on YouTube as well. Reach out to us. We will definitely come and find you so that we can tell the story. Shout out to Stormzy, who is definitely supporting the Reachout Project. He's still doing that.
And Ian Wright as well.
That's great. Ian, I always say that to my family, right? In terms of your style of dressing, maybe somebody needs to tag in. I always say, I look at Ian and I see myself. Yeah, I choose the style of dressing. I see myself when I get there. Ian, shout out to you. I am hoping to have an interview with one of these artists, okay, who is equally working with vulnerable people. Because behind the scene, we only see, you know, these people being the celebrities that we know. But some of them, just like Stormzy is doing, are really helping our vulnerable people. Emmanuel, we talked about, you know, fathers supporting their children. You gave me a scenario, you know, when we were having pre-discussion in regards to, you know, it's just like fathers being able to support their children, to take them to places where they can show them the ropes. You know, give that spill here. I think people would want to be able to relate to it, because the issue of fatherhood in this country and possibly in other parts of the world can be difficult, right? But all that it means is young boys, young girls need a role modeling. Tell us about what you were talking to me about fatherhood.
Yes, I guess when we spoke about fatherhood, I think what we acknowledged was what I would call, in some ways, an epidemic, a crisis when it comes to fatherhood, because what we know is that we've got a huge amount of boys that are taking up positions in police stations, in dangerous places, and the common theme with a lot of these young boys is that there isn't a stable parental structure at home, and most likely there's not a father figure at home. And even if there is a father figure, is there a role model in that house? Is there someone that's leading their home, leading in their community? And I think the example I gave was saying that, you know, many centuries ago, you would have seen in society men leaving their house to go to, maybe not to go to war, but to train for battle. They would have left their house to go to hunt. They would have left their house to go on a journey to do something in relation to their job or to support their family. And right next to them, you would have seen their 5, their 6, 7, 10-year-old son walking with them. And I think the reason why that's important is because from the moment that dad has left his house and he's got on his horse, or he's packed up his bags, or he's packed up his axe ready to cut some wood wherever he is, the journey from there to his place of work, he's got his son there watching him. And whilst his son there is watching him, they're also having a dialogue and a communication, which is almost certainly the dad preparing his son for what's about to come. More likely for him to be able to do what the father's currently doing. More importantly, maybe to do even more than that. So not only is he seeing the example, he's being coached by the example, he's being mentored by the example. And that's what fatherhood is. And what we don't see with young men now is we don't see young boys who are literally walked through life. And if you think of the analogy of literally somebody holding someone's hand, and they're 5 years old and they're still holding their hand when they're 10, and they're still holding their hand when they're 20, and they're still holding their hand when they're 40, because when it comes to fatherhood, parenting, coaching, mentoring, there's not a point in life where it just stops. My mum didn't stop being my mum, and my dad won't stop being my dad because I'm now 31. But what we don't see is actually from the very beginning, those young boys having someone's hand to hold on to see how to do life.
Through the journey.
And unfortunately, a woman can't teach a boy how to be a man. A mum can't teach a son how to be a father. A teacher can't teach a young boy how to be an adult or be a male within society. They can do only so much, which is to provide, to give love, to do what their part is to do. You know, as a woman, they've got their purpose, their job, and that's for the most part where it stops. So what you see is young boys go out there and they find a father figure, and they do two things. They find a community, or they find parenting through their friends and their community, or they find it from people who are above them, and that person could be doing something great or not great. And those are the children that people prey on. An older man or an older person knows a young vulnerable boy when they see them. If they've got no one walking behind them, if they've got no one that they're going home to, if they've got no one that's basically checking to see where they are, they've got them like that already. Because all it takes is for a 25-year-old guy, sometimes the older person could be 20, and all he's saying to a 13, 14-year-old boy is, do you want to make some money? Do you want to get this, 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 and that? But a young boy that's got someone at home that's already told him, this is how you need to walk through life.
Yeah.
This is where you need to go. If that comes your way, don't take that option.
Yeah.
But if you haven't got that at home, you say, all right then, lead me.
Yeah.
And the boy extends his hands out to the person that's come to him,
Yeah.
and they lead him to a path of destruction. That's what happens. They lead them to Ipswich to go sell drugs for weeks. Nobody knows where they are. They lead them literally to prison. They lead them to where they need to pick up a knife and a gun to fight a war that's not even their war half the time.
Let me jump in, Emmanuel. Guys, to all parents out there, you know, we definitely know what we are experiencing in terms of what? Blacks, minorities, you know, in the UK, in other parts of the world, in terms of sometimes saying the system is against us. But equally, we have our roles to play, okay, as parents, especially with the young black boys out there. With the parent out there, we need to parent our children, okay, in instances where we really feel that we haven't got the services or we haven't got the know-how of looking after these children. We definitely have people like this that we can refer to, we can reach out. And it's a bit of a coincidence that the project is called the Reachout Project.
Yeah.
People can reach out so that at least they can get the help and support that they need. We are seeing our children being excluded. We are seeing our children moving into what? The police stations. We are seeing our children being moved into what? The prisons. What's the point? You know, what are we doing about it? And I'll definitely say, Emmanuel, that is the reason why I'm really proud of you, because you are a father. But it's not just a matter of you being a father. You had your own experiences of exclusions, but yet you managed to keep your, you know, your passion in terms of being good at what you're doing. And at this point in time, you are an assistant head.
Yeah.
Emmanuel, if you are possibly, you know, let's say we end in this whole conversation, because there is a whole concept that we can talk about in terms of mentoring. If you are saying anything to parents out there, you know what, young people out there, what would you say? Because you're a young lad in London, maybe you could be doing something different. I may be wrong, yeah, but you've chosen something else. What's maybe in the music scene, people will be saying what? You could have been chosen to be running your own show in the end, yeah? Trying to learn the language, yeah? But you definitely kept yourself on track. If you are saying anything to young people out there, what would you say so that we can wrap up and end for the day?
I guess my message to any young person would be like me talking to myself. And what would I like to hear? I would say one of the most important messages I can share is your beginning doesn't determine your end. And I say that from experience. If you had asked me at 16, would I be where I'm at now? I would have said no. But every time I go through a trial or tribulation, I remember that where I started from isn't necessarily the end of my journey. And I think in terms of something that's going to be really kind of like supportive to a young person is if you've got a dream or you've got something that you're passionate about, surround yourself by people who promote that, who give you an opportunity to excel in that particular area. It's very difficult to be that mature at that age, but the reality of it is if you've got someone that's already encouraging you to do something far removed from what you would like your ideal life to be, it's already a wrong path, you know. But unfortunately, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old can't make that decision on their own. So then the message is for parents is you have to listen to your young people. You have to pay attention to their interests. Unfortunately, finances matter, but finances should never be an excuse to not knowing what your child is involved in, what they like, their strengths from as young as possible. Because if you can shape and cultivate that in your home, you dictate what the child is possibly able to do in a school environment. You can't rely on the school to shape your child's future. The children that do well in school, whether it's private schools or state schools, you know, the children that I see do well are ultimately the children who also have a similar routine expectation at home. Sometimes the expectation is even greater than what the school have for that child, and those children will succeed in some capacity, in some way, because of what they've got at home, the foundation. The school is just a system. When they go through that system, they can come out of it great, they can come out of it bad. And then what? It's too late at the age of 16 to try and then tell a young boy what to do, what not to do. It's not too late, but the work is a lot harder, you know. So for parents, just engage with your children, man. Just listen to them, pay attention to their needs, find out a way to co-parent if you're not with your partner. There's a great Instagram video, a great Instagram profile. It's called Raising Boys to Men.
Okay.
Go check him out. He basically dedicates all of his time and his work to teaching parents how to co-parent. Because whether parents are together or not, they still have a significant contribution in the way that they raise their child. And ultimately, parenting is going to be the foundation to a young person getting their needs met. And if it's not met at home, it's going to be very difficult for their needs to be met elsewhere in that same positive way.
Emmanuel, if you know, this is a young man full of wisdom. You know, I find it bizarre to use the word young because, Emmanuel, in terms of what the society makes us believe, at the age of 31, you shouldn't be thinking about where you are. Yeah, you're giving talks, you're giving briefings. You know, you have a whole lot of things going on.
Thank you.
Which I'm really proud of. Emmanuel, if anybody is thinking, you know, where can I find this man of wisdom? How do people reach out to you?
My Instagram is Manny Owl. You can find me also on Twitter with the same name, Manny Owl. My website, if you want to look at some of my blogs and my articles and some work that I've done, is mannysconscience.com. And I guess maybe LinkedIn as well. You might find me Emmanuel Abuyelu. So most of my work would be on my profiles.
What I will definitely do is I will be putting all those links as part of this video so that you can reach out to Emmanuel as well as other people as well. Guys, you know, I would say for the likes of Stormzy, Ian Wright, as well as other people, Brett, I'm coming for you, yeah? You know, we can only be proud of, you know, such people in our communities. But the bottom line is, as men or maybe as people that may deem ourselves to be in some status, our only essence is to be able to give back to the community that we come from. So I'm really urging people, if you've got a story that you think, you know what, that may motivate that young person out there, reach out to us as Black Next Gen. We will come and find you so that we can bring you on for our children to hear, you know, to see you, so that they can believe in themselves that they can do the same. Guys, it's been a very amazing, you know, it's a Saturday. I've really managed to find Emmanuel because the talking takes ages. But lo and behold, we managed, you know, to meet today. Guys, it's been an amazing, you know, time with you today. If you've watched till this far and you've not subscribed, come on, man. Just click on the subscribe button. Let's go together. It's been an amazing one. And until we come back to you again, bye-bye.